It was just another quiet day at the mechanic's garage until a few bikers pulled up, their engines roaring as they skidded to a stop. But what started as a routine visit quickly escalated into chaos. These bikers weren't here for a tune-up. They had something else in mind. In a blink, they began trashing the garage, flipping tools, smashing windows, and causing havoc. The mechanic, an older man with years of experience, watched helplessly as his workshop was torn apart. Little did they know, this wasn't just any ordinary mechanic shop. His team, a group of skilled and tough workers, was always around to back him up. And as the bikers continued their rampage, they were about to realize that they had messed with the wrong people. What happens next? Well, that's when the real trouble begins. Stick around to find out how the tables turn. The mechanic, named Ray, had been running his garage for over 30 years. It wasn't just a place to fix bikes, it was his life. The garage had seen it all, from simple repairs to major custom builds. And Ray's reputation had spread far and wide. His team, a tight-knit group of skilled professionals, had become like family to him. There was Mike, the quiet one who could weld anything, and Carla, the sharp-eyed mechanic who could spot a problem from a mile away. They were the heart and soul of the shop, and Ray trusted them more than anyone. But as the bikers ransacked the garage, something felt off. Ray had seen trouble before, but this time it felt personal. These weren't just random vandals, they had a purpose. Was it revenge? Or something worse? The sound of their engines roaring outside was only the beginning, and the real storm hadn't even started yet. Ray watched helplessly as the bikers kicked over the toolbox, smashing his prized vintage motorcycle in the process. He could hear their taunts, the sharp laughter echoing in the chaos, but he couldn't make sense of it. It didn't feel like a random act of vandalism. No, this was targeted. Ray's hands balled into fists, but he knew better than to rush in. He needed to stay calm, bide his time. Mike, who was in the back working on a custom frame, hadn't heard the commotion at first. But the moment he stepped out, his eyes widened. He immediately recognized one of the bikers, their leader. Tony, a guy who had rolled through the garage months ago, with an attitude and a half-finished bike that no one could fix. Ray had refused to take the job, sensing something shady about the whole thing. Was this revenge for turning Tony away? Carla, who was always quick to read a situation, quietly grabbed a wrench. She didn't trust these bikers, not one bit. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Could they have a score to settle, or were they just looking for trouble? Either way, she wasn't about to let them tear apart everything Ray had built. But as she checked the security cameras, she saw something else. There was a second group of bikers hiding just out of sight, waiting. This wasn't just about revenge. It was a setup. Ray's team was in more danger than they realized. Outside, the laughter of the bikers grew louder, but no one knew just how much worse this was about to get. The tension thickened in the air. What did they want, and were Ray's team prepared to stop them? The garage wasn't just their workplace. It was their home, and no one was about to let it fall without a fight. The seconds stretched on like hours as Ray stood frozen, eyes darting between the bikers and his team. His heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't let fear take over. He knew his crew would do anything to protect the garage, but he also knew they couldn't handle a full-blown fight with numbers stacked against them. Carla was already moving. She grabbed a steel pipe from the shelf, the weight of it steady in her hands. Her jaw tightened as she eyed the bikers, assessing their movements. Mike had disappeared into the back, but Ray knew he wouldn't be hiding. Mike had a way of being where he needed to be, especially when things got messy. Ray's thoughts raced. He'd always been a man of peace, a man who believed in hard work, not conflict. But these bikers weren't interested in reason. They were relentless, and Ray could sense that they were getting ready to make their next move. Then it happened. Tony, the leader, raised his hand, and for a moment, everything went silent. The bikers stopped what they were doing and turned to face him. There was something in his eyes, like he was waiting for something, giving the others a signal. Ray's gut twisted. This wasn't just an act of rage. This was calculated. "Get ready," Carla whispered to Ray, her voice low but full of urgency. Ray didn't respond. He knew there was no way to avoid it now. They had to stand their ground. But just as he opened his mouth to shout for Mike to come back, the door to the garage slammed open with a loud crash. A figure stepped in, dark and imposing, a silhouette against the harsh light of the evening. Ray's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a random person, he recognized him. It was Mike's older brother, Sam. The man had been out of the game for years, but when he showed up, things usually got serious. As the bikers turned to face the new arrival, their leader Tony's expression shifted. His cocky smirk faltered for a moment. The tension in the air was electric, and Ray felt the weight of it settle into his bones. Sam didn't look like he was here to talk. He looked ready for war. The bikers hesitated, but then one of them, someone from the second group, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Ray could feel the heat of the situation rising. What were they going to do? The garage was no longer just a battleground. It was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. Everything depended on what happened next. As Sam stepped further into the garage, his boots echoing against the concrete floor, the bikers seemed to draw back for a split second. There was a moment of stillness, like the world had stopped turning. Ray felt his pulse race. Sam was no stranger to trouble, but even he wouldn't have walked in here without a reason. Sam wasn't here to break up a fight. He was here to escalate it. But then, just as Ray opened his mouth to ask Sam what the hell he was doing, something unexpected happened. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, far louder than the roar of any motorcycle. The ground beneath their feet trembled, the walls rattled, and the lights flickered above. Everyone froze. Out of nowhere, a blacked-out van skidded to a halt in front of the garage. The doors swung open with a metallic screech, and out stepped a group of men dressed in dark tactical gear, faces hidden behind balaclavas. Ray's stomach dropped. These weren't ordinary bikers, and this wasn't some street brawl. This was a coordinated assault. Tony's cocky smirk faltered completely, replaced by a flash of fear. For the first time, the bikers looked less like aggressors and more like pawns in a much larger game. The van crew moved quickly, fanning out across the garage, and one of them, a tall figure with a scar running down his cheek, approached Tony. Their interaction was sharp, quiet, just enough for Ray to catch a few words. "We told you this was the last warning." Ray's mind raced. This wasn't about revenge for a bike repair gone wrong. This was about something bigger. The bikers, the van, Sam's sudden appearance. It all felt like pieces of a much larger puzzle. The garage wasn't just being attacked. It was being caught in the middle of something far more dangerous. The scarred man turned to Sam, his eyes narrowing as he saw. The garage was a blur of motion, metal clashing, grunts of effort, and the sound of tools being used as weapons. Ray found himself fighting too, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. The bikers, though tough, were starting to lose ground. They weren't prepared for this kind of resistance. It was clear now that Sam had a plan, and his presence wasn't random. Ray's heart raced as he watched Mike slam a biker into a stack of tires, while Carla expertly took down another with a swift, well-placed blow. It seemed like they might just win. But then the unexpected happened. A loud crack echoed through the garage, followed by the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. Ray froze. The scarred man had stepped back, a gun now aimed at Sam's head. "That's enough," he sneered. "You can't win this. This isn't your fight." For a split second, it seemed like all hope was lost. The garage was falling apart. The bikers were regrouping, and the man with the gun was ready to end it all. Ray's mind raced. He had to do something. Without thinking, Ray grabbed a nearby wrench, the weight of it familiar in his hand. In one quick motion, he hurled it straight at the scarred man's gun, knocking it out of his hand. The man staggered back in surprise, but before he could react, Sam closed the distance, locking the man in a chokehold. In seconds, the weapon was disarmed, and the threat was neutralized. The bikers, seeing their leader go down, hesitated. They were losing, and they knew it. Some of them started to back away, not willing to fight any longer. Tony, the leader, glared at Ray and his team, a mix of anger and grudging respect in his eyes. "This isn't over," he muttered before signaling to his remaining crew to leave. The garage fell into an eerie silence, the tension finally breaking. Ray's chest heaved with exhaustion, his hands trembling as he surveyed the damage. The garage had taken a beating, but his team had come through. For now, they had won. But just as they thought the danger was over, something unexpected happened. The sound of an